EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365. Another week moving right along, and we open up this Thursday with a nice edition here on the show. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, brother? You had a little energy for us pre-show, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, more angry energy. We had a 42, as I explained. We had a 40. I don't know if it was 42. You mentioned you probably added some stuff on the clip, but we had a long discussion about Jordan Davis and the fifth-year option. And I don't want to pick on people, but I got some rando in my direct messages saying I got the franchise tag mixed up with the fifth-year option. I'm like, dude, there's a 40-minute discussion out there. You're welcome to listen to it. I think the people that did are more educated on Jordan Davis than anybody else. I've covered the Eagles on a daily. I've covered the Eagles, partially since 2014 on a daily basis to 2016. So that's Carson Wentz's rookie season. So every first-round pick, every year, I got to do the same story unless they move on a little bit early, like Jalen Reagor, whether they pick it up like Devontae Smith or whether they turn it down like Andre Dillard or somebody like that. Every year, they're going to do it three times this year, but the only one they're seriously considering is Jordan Davis because they have trade pickups. Jahan Dotson, obviously they're not going to pick up the fifth-year option. And who's the other one? They traded Kenny. They would have had the Kenny discussion. They obviously wouldn't have picked up the fifth-year option on Kenny Pickett. Oh, Kenyon Green. Yeah, they have the fifth-year. Obviously, they're not going to pick up the fifth-year option on Kenyon Green. So, the interesting. There's no-brainers, and there's serious discussion. Jordan Davis is in between. He's obviously not Kenyon Green, who hasn't even been here. He's not Jahan Dotson, who was a trade pickup. He's a good player, but he doesn't play enough. We got 42 minutes on that. We can discuss it again. But I think the people that listen to that are the most educated about Jordan Davis and why he's an esoteric decision and all that kind of stuff. And I've advocated the Eagles should pick it up.
Yeah.
But what I've said, and please listen, they pick it up as a placeholder. What I mean by that is when I have a meaningful player, most recently Devontae Smith, of course they're going to pick it up, but they don't want the player to play their fifth year under that option because it limits your salary cap's malleability, and they want to get the extension done with foundational players to help with the short-term cap situation. And they fold in the fifth-year option, usually as part of that extension. Is that difficult?
No.
Where's the franchise tag involved in this? This guy's saying I'm conflating the franchise tag with the fifth-year option. I've covered this team since 2016. I've talked to Howie Roseman about fifth-year options. I've talked to Jake Rosenberg, who is no longer here, unfortunately, about fifth-year options. My God. Sorry.
I hear you.
I spent 42 minutes, and here's where it comes down to. I brought up Tony Dungy. I brought him up a couple times this week because I think what the Eagles do better than other teams, I'm looking at you, Dallas Cowboys, is try to make their employees happy for the most part. And you don't want big-time players. You don't want meaningful players playing on last year of contracts. You don't want to do it. It's not good business. Sometimes you have to do it. I'm not talking about one-year prove-it players like the Eagles are bringing in Tamu offseason. That happens all the time. I'm talking about your meaningful players. Dallas Goedert. You don't want him being a lame duck. Good or bad. Good or bad. Might have to go. Might stay, but you're going to work something out. Slay the first time. Had to work something out. Slay the second time. It's gone too far. We got to go in another direction. But you generally don't want to be the Dallas Cowboys and let big time players, and forget about aging players, that more so, guys 25, 26. You don't want to play that game. Cincinnati Bengals is too. A, you're going to lose a bunch of money when you finally do sign them. And B, you want happy, which is what Tony said, happy, productive employees. And that results in guys who get tagged with the franchise tag. This is where he probably got confused. That results in guys playing on 50-year option, that you want to be meaningful parts of your team moving forward past the 5th year. Anytime that situation pops up, especially in this generation, it's probably not good business. And it doesn't happen to the Philadelphia Eagles that often. It did happen with Hassan Reddick, and you saw what happened. He outperformed his contract, wasn't happy, dramatically outperformed his contract, 2022, wasn't happy. And you saw how that ultimately unfolded. That may be the reason why the Eagles were so early with Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Who knows? But anyway, sorry.
No, good tangent, and I think a necessary tangent, because you're out here giving people information, and if they're going to get it wrong, at least, if you're going to argue or disagree, that's fine, but get it right. I mean, you got to get it right. A nice tangent to open the show here on Earth 365. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. As I mentioned, a Thursday edition. Not much new in Eagle land other than Johnny Mack spoke with a couple of players yesterday. Lane Johnson spoke. Azeez Ojulari spoke. Zach Bond spoke. And did you speak to Adoree Jackson as well? I saw him show up with
he did. He was later. I was dealing with a tree guy, so I wasn't there. But I had to go back and listen to Adoree. But it's funny you say that, because I think he was, really the most impressive of the day. Which means nothing, obviously. Lane's the Hall of Famer, Zach's the All-Pro, but right. We know those guys. And they're just talking about big money contracts, and they're stars, and that's what they are. I think the more interesting part of it at this point is the newer players, and it was, you had Azeez Ojulari and Adoree Jackson, who, to me, I think you have the highest ceiling player, and they bookended each other, in the highest floor player of all the Tangbu offseason signings, right. In my sort of estimation. Adoree was really engaging. I think he was really impressive. Azeez was more paint by the numbers, and that's fine. He doesn't want to make bold predictions or do anything rash, but I was hoping to get a little bit more from Azeez, but and I was a little bit late getting to him because we were doing the show. He showed up a little bit. He was supposed to go at 10 o'clock right after the show, but went a little bit early. And Adoree was later in the afternoon, but really impressed with Adoree Jackson. I think he's the one guy who I look at that they signed, and I know people are more excited about Ojulari, and he probably has the higher ceiling. But if there's one guy I say, all right, that guy's going to be on the team and contribute, that would be Adoree Jackson. He could be a starter, or he could be Isaiah Rodgers, the cornerback 3, but he's going to contribute. I feel pretty comfortable saying that.
How was he graded out the last couple of years? Because he was a really good player a couple of years back. You remember when he signed that big contract? He was a pretty highly sought after player. Now, obviously, not so much anymore.
The Eagles wanted him.
Year deal, but
The Eagles wanted him. He was actually scheduled to visit here.
Right, and the Giants didn't let him out of the room, right?
Yeah. Giants didn't let him out of the building. And he spoke about that a little bit. He knew a bunch of people with the Giants he went to Southern California. So those guys, they're like Georgia guys. A lot of colleges
are like brothers for sure.
Yeah. So there was a lot of people, he said, both on the team and support staff and coaches. So he knew a lot of people there. So he just felt a little bit more comfortable at the time. And he was a big money guy. I think he signed a 3-year, $39 million contract, maybe something in that range at the time.
I think it was 3 for 36 or 3 for 39.
So something like that. somewhere in that range. But he was a big money guy coming off. He was a first round pick in Tennessee, played pretty well. And he was, he was in demand. So different stage of his career. The Eagles had significant interest. But I mean, no, he's graded out very well, except for the 2023 season. He bounced back. This year is 38th of 116. If you want to look at it, that's decent on a bad team.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid.
Now, he didn't play as much as he used to because they drafted Deonte Banks and they wanted to get some younger players out there, which makes sense for a rebuilding team like the Giants perpetually. But if you look at his first year, he was 15th of 116 as a starting corner. And his second year with the Giants, he was 31 of 118. And he had one bad year, but he bounced back. So, he's been a pretty solid player throughout his career. But, I don't want to say he's a star, but pretty solid player throughout his career. And when you see the uncertainty with the Eagles at the cornerback position, basically, again, it's March, whatever. Got to look at the dates.
I think it's the first day of spring today, Johnny Mac.
Yeah.
We're cooking, baby. We're moving right along.
Yeah, and but right now it's Kaylee Ringo. Which is fine projecting it.
My gut feeling, and I'm not an insider. I don't work for the team. My gut feeling would be that Adorie's going to be the other guy. I don't know why I say that. I just don't know if Keely's polished enough as a player. I know it would be like, if it's not now, when is it going to be? He's going into year 3 now, but I just feel like Adorie's good enough to, I feel like that's a better replacement for Darius Slay than going to Keely Ringo. I don't know why I feel that way. That's just
I think, from the standpoint of that's how they did it last year. You had the one vet with the young guys, and now do you really want to play 3 young guys? Who from a playing time experience, Quinyon Mitchell would be the veteran of the group from just the playing time experience. Taking the most snaps. I mean, that's bold. But the Eagles, they only have 4 30-year-old players, as we said yesterday. Hat tip to Jimmy Kempski. They're young all over the place, which there's a lot of good to that, but there's some bad. And, last year they had Darius Slade. Last year they had Brandon Graham.
Right. I mean, even Josh Sweat and, second.
Sweat. Yeah, Josh Sweat. I mean, even Mekhi Becton at his age coming in. The whole point of Mekhi Becton playing is because one of these young players didn't seize his opportunity.
Exactly.
All of them aren't going to seize their opportunity. So I put it up yesterday on Twitter. I'll try to find it real quick. When you think about all the young players the Eagles are expecting to step up, or not expecting, but hoping. I know they don't like to use that term. As Howie would say, hope is not a strategy. So what they've done is they brought in competition for each of those particular positions where they want a young player to step up. And part of it is draft proofing the roster. But, and
which I think they've done a pretty good job at, by the way. I mean, I know you're not.
They always do. They always.
Yeah, I know it's Temu, but I do think there's a method to the madness when you're signing some of these 1-year deals. I think they've done a pretty good job at draft proof.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they generally do. I mean, that's their philosophy.
Right.
They don't want to feel pressured to take something at really any position because, they're not comfortable with at least some kind of safety net, but I can't find it. But anyway, it starts, we can go down the list. It starts at quarterback 2. You're moving to Tanner McKee. Well, they traded for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I know for a fact that they liked him coming out in the draft, and he was in the same draft as Tanner.
Right.
And they had him higher than Tanner on their board. Now, that's 2 years of development here. I'm not trying to say that the Eagles don't like Tanner McKee. They expect him to step forward. They're confident in their developmental abilities. And Tanner's the guy they want to seize that job. But if he doesn't, you have Dorian Thompson-Robinson, another player they like. And if they can get in and get going in the right direction, if people can say, he didn't perform well as a starter in Cleveland, which is certainly the case, but he was a starter in Cleveland. Those are meaningful, even from an NFL standpoint, whatever he started 5 games or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are meaningful.
That's very meaningful for a backup quarterback. Absolutely.
Especially a young backup quarterback. And then you have running back. They want it to be Will Shipley, but they brought in A.J. Dillon.
Right.
Right guard is interesting because and Fred Johnson factors in. We should mention Fred left. I don't know if we mentioned.
Yeah, we didn't mention that. Yeah, we got to talk about that for sure.
Fred started 6 games last year.
Yeah, that's a lot of games, John.
Yeah. Jordan was out. If you remember, he had to go on injury reserve. It looked like people remember I thought he tore his hamstring, and I was worried. I remember when he did it, I was worried. Yeah, I might be a season ender. Luckily, he was back in 4 weeks and he was never missed a beat, which was pretty amazing. But, Fred had to start all those games. He started a game for Lane. Lane was out with a concussion 1 game, and he started the Week 18 game, which obviously the Eagles rested everybody. So he started 6 games as a swing tackle. Now, here's my theory, and I'm going to throw it out, going on another tangent. Because a lot of people say, well, they want Tyler Steen to be the right guard, step up. And that's probably right. But I can't help thinking they traded Kenyon Green. For those who don't know, Tyler Steen was a tackle in college.
Yeah.
I mean, a full-time tackle.
A good tackle. Alabama.
Yeah. Yep. He played 4 years at Vanderbilt before he transferred for his final year at Alabama.
Right.
He played 4 years in Vandy at right tackle. And then when he transferred to Alabama, he played left tackle. So, you just lost your swing tackle, which is a very important job. I know people don't think about it and they go, oh, they lost Fred Johnson, yada, yada, yada. Tyler Steen might be the swing tackle. That might be their plan.
That's interesting.
If they can get Kenyon Green up to speed. Now that's a big if. He has not played well in Houston. But I mean, obviously he was the 15th pick in the draft. Obviously he's got physical skills. You have Jeff Stoutland. They might be hoping that the direction. Now, most people in the NFL projected Tyler inside because he doesn't reach the arm length, 34. It's like 32 something.
Right.
So they said, well, he's got to play inside. I've always felt, because he's taken reps at tackle in training camp because of injury, he's way more comfortable at tackle. And why wouldn't he be? Played his entire college career at tackle, and he was a good tackle. So I just put that in the back of people's minds. And we'll see how that develops. But I can't help thinking the Eagles are kind of hoping Jeff Stoutland unlocks what obviously that Kenyon Green has physically, and that maybe enables you to make Tyler Steen the swing tackle, where he doesn't have to play every week.
Right.
But
I can see that.
If he goes in there for short terms, he's probably going to be better than Fred. Now, Fred was pretty good, though. Well, I'll say this. He wasn't great at times, but he was great against Trey Hendrickson.
He was good enough, John, to lose Mailata for 4 games and not necessarily miss a huge beat. That's impressive.
Well, that's impressive. I mean, I don't want to, he was not near
He wasn't my lot.
team.
I'm not saying that, but he wasn't a total liability on the offensive line.
And especially against, because I thought, oh, this is going to be ugly.
Yeah, Trey
It's
Hendrickson
always
led the
interesting to
NFL back.
me when players really step up against great players. Maybe they get more focused. I don't know what it is, but his best game was against the best player he played, Brett Johnson, which is always weird to me. But maybe, there's a lot of things. Maybe he doesn't want to get embarrassed. Maybe he's locked in more when you're facing a player like that. Who knows how it works out, but it's interesting. So that's one of the guys. And I go back to the original, sorry for the tangent. If you think about, not that it's big, but wide receiver, you lose Paris Campbell. Who's going to step up there? Pumper, is that Johnny Wilson? But he's got him moving the tight end. Anais Smith showed nothing. I think Danny Gray's the best receiver this team has. He was a practice squad guy. I think he could be involved. Right guard, we just mentioned. Is it going to be Steen? Is it going to be Green?
Yeah.
Defensive tackle.
Adoree or Keeley.
Yeah, defensive tackle. Morrow. Defensive end. Jalix Hunt. Aziz for Josh Sweat. Ojulari, Josh Uche for Brandon Graham, however you want to phrase it. Orrin Burks, linebacker 3. You got Trotter. Cornerback, Ringo Jackson, as you mentioned. Cornerback 3, remember there's 2 cornerbacks because you lost Rodgers. So for the starting job, it's probably Ringo Jackson. For the backup job, it's probably the loser, Ringo Jackson.
Right.
And then safety, Sidney Brown is the guy they want to step up.
And we'll see if they bring him in competition.
Yeah, I would think they have to.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are excited by Lewis Seen because of the name, and he's a first-round pick, and he's from Georgia. I think it goes Brown, McCullum, Seen. Like, Lewis has a long way to go, but people recognize him.
Yeah, but you can see the philosophy that the Eagles are trying to do here, where you have a young guy. They didn't want to just give the young guy the position, as we've talked about on the show. So they're bringing in some competition for each of them, and the offensive line is a little bit muddier water, as John pointed out, with the right guard, the swing tackle. Obviously, you lost Fred Johnson yesterday. John, what do you think about that loss, man? I did want to mention it on the show. He signs with Jacksonville. Some people were asking me yesterday. I was waiting to talk to you about the compensatory picks because there's a cancel one out. I don't know. I'm not as good with that stuff. The compensatory pick formula.
No, that's not. It's glad, I got another guy. I read they get a 6th-round pick. First of all, nobody knows this contract Brett Johnson said. So stop reading who said that. I don't know. That would be
yeah. I think it's $4 million, like the baseline, I guess, for a comp pick or something.
It could be. But it's got to be real money.
It's got to be right.
There's a lot of.
But is it $4 million agent money, or is it $4 million real?
$4 million real money on the average annual value. But here's the thing: most people don't understand. You can only have 4. The Eagles are already maxed out. They're getting. They're projected to get a 3rd rounder for Milton, 4th rounder for Josh, 5th rounder for Kai, and a 6th rounder for Isaiah. That's it. End of discussion. The contract you have to be worried about is Adoree Jackson. In theory, if Aziz Ojulari, I apologize, because he's the guy who's maybe in the 4
pick number,
maybe in the 4 or 5 man. If his contract is big enough, Aziz Ojulari. And my guess is it isn't, only because Howie and Bryce Johnson, who's the new Jake Rosenberg, are really good at their jobs.
Yeah, and they know this formula.
Yeah. And my guess is it isn't. So they're maxed out. Number one, they're maxed out. But if for some reason they woke up one day and they forgot their jobs, and Aziz wipes out the 6th-round compensatory pick for Isaiah Rodgers, then in theory, Brett Johnson could factor in if his deal is big enough, but his deal ain't going to be big enough. Now, can I say that with 100%? No, because I haven't seen the deal, but he ain't making $5 million. It's
Yeah.
going to be 1 year better in men. If you're being real, it may be a couple incentives. So, as we stand right now, and it could change because of Azeez Ojulari, the Eagles are maxed out on comp picks. They can't get any more comp picks. I think, most people don't understand that. Two, again, if Azeez and the Eagles don't care about that 6-round pick, 6-round compensatory, which is possible, I guess. And his contract is too large and wipes out the 6-round pick for Isaiah. Then any contract, whether it's Fred, there's really nobody left. That would be in a range to generate a compensatory pick could be back in the mix, but Fred's contract realistically is not going to be in that conversation. I feel very comfortable saying that, although I don't know his contract, so I can't say 100%. And Jacksonville's a dumb team, and everybody they're not. He's not getting $6 million a year. You're not. So you can be realistic about it, which I prefer to be. But the Eagles, as we stand today with the information we have, the more important part is the Eagles are maxed out on compensatory picks. They already have 4. You can't have more than 4.
Right. And if Azeez cancels it out, it would have to be real money, not the agent money that they've put out. Because some people are saying in the chat, Azeez will cancel out one, but I think that's because they're going off the number that was reported, which isn't necessarily what the number that's going to be filed will be.
Well, the best, Nick Corte is the best. You could follow him at Nick Corte, Korte, Over the Cap, does their or you just go to Over the Cap. They do their compensatory board. Anybody can look at it. And he said, and this is exactly what Nick said, I'm holding off assigning an average per year to Azeez Ojulari in the database for now, as he signed 4 enough to qualify as a compensatory free agent. If you believe the number, that means the Eagles would see the 2026 comp picks, the 6-round pick for Rodgers, leave the board. So that, I assume, is what people are referring to, because Nick has not ruled it out, nor should he, because there's a legitimate chance, if they don't care about that pick and like Azeez better, which they probably do, that they said, all right, who cares? But again, even if that's the case and it wipes out Rodgers, what I'm trying to explain, Fred's not signing for significant money. I wish he was a great guy. And I could be wrong. I haven't seen the contract, but I would be stunned if he signed for, and again, I'd be on here ripping Tony Khan because you don't have to. So anyway, that's the deal. I assume that's why people are saying it. But they, again, Nick, point to the first part of what he said. I'm holding off a signing. Where he's holding off because he does this for a living, and we know what the agent money tends to be versus the real life impact. So 1 year, $4 million as advertised. I think Jeremy Fowler was the one who broke it. I could be wrong. That might be 1 year up to $4 million with a bunch of incentives, and that's why Nick is holding off. But yes, in theory, that would wipe Rodgers off the board, and then you could be in line to get another compensatory pick if the contract is big enough. I do not believe that Fred Johnson's contract will be big enough, but you can hope I'm wrong.
We'll see what happens there, John. Good breakdown. A good first segment here. We had to debunk some narratives. We got into comp picks. We got into some of the contracts, some of the moves that the Eagles are making. So pretty good stuff, John. I do want to talk to you about the secondary when we come back a little bit. I want to talk about Reed Blankenship. You mentioned something on Quinyon Mitchell yesterday that I want to talk about further, with him potentially moving over to take over for Darius Slay. And you mentioned the bigger responsibility that has. So I want to talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about that I have updated thoughts on Jordan Davis. I know we might not want to go back into that, but I'll give you those later on in the show, and we'll continue to break it down. We'll talk some NFL draft as well. How far are we from the NFL draft now? It's got to be getting closer, man. It's got to be, 40 days? Let me see what we got.
We're under. I think we're
35 days. 35 days
40.
away from the draft. So we'll start to dive heavy into what the NFL draft will bring in about 35 days from now. So we'll talk about all that. Johnny Mac, great first segment, brother. We'll do it. We'll do it right when we get back here in 3 minutes. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new. We're live every day, 8 to 10 a.m. on Birds 365. And if you're listening on the podcast, we appreciate you. Don't forget to leave a review, 5-star review if you enjoy the show. That helps us grow over there. So big thanks to all of you guys for checking in today. We'll be right back on Birds 365.
The following is a real testimony.